Secretary of State, firstly, thank you so much for agreeing to do the interview. First question from me on loss and damage. Now, you are aware of the huge impact that loss and damage is having disproportionately on poorer, low-income countries in the global south. Now, my question is, does the government recognise the scale of the finance needed to support those countries effectively respond to the impact of loss and damage in their countries, on their communities? And what will the government do to deliver the finance needed for those countries?
I'm well aware of the impacts of climate change, and the threat of loss and damage are real, affect all countries, and are likely to grow. As the incoming COP26 presidency, we're committed to taking action across a range of finance issues, including around adaptation and responding to the impacts of climate change. And in order to demonstrate solidarity, donor countries must first meet their existing commitments. The UK is clear about the importance of developed countries meeting and surpassing the commitment to jointly mobilise $100 billion of climate finance a year through to 2025 from a range of public and private sources. In the UK, our Prime Minister has committed to doubling the UK's public international climate finance to at least £11.6 billion between 2021 and 2025, with every pound going to tackle climate change and its consequences. At the G7, the UK, Germany and the USA announced new action to scale up protection for the world's most vulnerable communities against the impacts of climate change. And this protection is made all the more important by the havoc wrought by COVID-19 on domestic public budgets. So we are committed to helping the most vulnerable countries deal with these twin crises and to build back better. The UK has committed £120 million at the G7 to disaster risk finance programmes that enable quicker responses for vulnerable people when extreme weather and climate-linked disasters hit, from heat waves and droughts causing poor harvest to flooding and hurricanes destroying homes and livelihoods.
Thank you, Minister. My name's David Hillman, Director of the Robin Hood Tax Campaign, and I'd like to ask, finance for loss and damage is an outstanding issue from COP25. Still, no money has been offered by rich countries to developing countries to address the injustice of loss and damage. Indeed, to many, COP26 cannot be considered a success unless support to address loss and damage is an outcome. So can the Minister assure us that financial support for people on the front line of climate change will be forthcoming at COP26 in Glasgow in November?
As the Paris Agreement and the decision in Madrid points out, effective action on loss and damage is inextricably bound up with actions such as risk management, early warning, and action to build resilience of communities and ecosystems. At COP25, it was noted that existing funds under and outside the Convention on Adaptation, Disaster Preparedness, Risk Reduction and Response are already working to avert, minimise and to address loss and damage. Donors and international funds are asked to set out how they are acting on loss and damage and to prioritise spending towards addressing it. At COP26 and in the run-up, we will push for progress on these actions and to renew calls for coherent action using climate, development and disaster preparedness and response finance. Through the COP26 presidency, we are calling for greater quantity, quality and access to finance, and for responses to be joined up. The Task Force on Access to Finance, announced at the Climate and Developmental Ministerial in just a few weeks ago, aims to align support behind the national climate action plans of developing countries to improve access to climate finance. The outcomes will be to agree a new approach to access, marshalling coherent, programmatic support for countries' own nationally determined climate priorities, alongside specific implementable recommendations to address the system of climate finance as a whole. Throughout our COP26 presidency, we want to enable greater locally led action on the ground through adoption and operationalising the principles for locally led adaptation, working with governments, with civil society and with local actors.
Thank you, Minister. I'm Colin McQuiston, and I'm the Head of Climate and Resilience at Practical Action. And I'd like to know, as the incoming COP presidency, the UK can initiate certain actions that will shape the Glasgow COP. What are the UK's thoughts on using a reduction in loss and damage as one of the missing indicators of success in delivering the Paris Agreement? And is the UK considering designating a loss and damage champion to join the COP26 presidency team to help drive this agenda forward?
As the incoming COP presidency, the UK is committed to working with the international community to drive greater action to avert, to minimise and to address loss and damage. In my role, I'm encouraging a scale-up of practical joined-up action in this regard in all my engagements with countries, with businesses and with civil society. This includes pushing for improved early action and early warning systems to build resilience and to reduce vulnerability. For example, through the Risk-Informed Early Action Partnership, which is known as REAP, of which the UK is a convening partner, and I encourage others to join. And as previously mentioned, advocating for an increase in disaster risk financing to support those most affected by the impacts of and losses caused by climate-related shocks. And ahead of COP in November, we are seeking to make progress by working with parties and stakeholders to develop the Santiago network on loss and damage, with the aim of making technical assistance to counter loss and damage genuinely available to those who need it.